Jordan. And
Michael Jordan should have won the MVP in the 1986-87 season. That is the main point, and the more you look at that year, the harder it is to argue against it. Yes, Magic Johnson won the award, and yes, the Lakers had a great season. But if we are really talking about value, real value, then Michael Jordan gave more to his team than any player gave to any team that season. This is not about hating on Magic Johnson, because Magic was amazing. This is not about acting like the Lakers were not great, because they were. This is about looking at what Michael Jordan did, what kind of team he had around him, how much pressure was on him every single night, and asking one simple question. If the award is called Most Valuable Player, then how was Michael Jordan not the winner? When people talk about MVP, the meaning always seems to change depending on the year. Sometimes it goes to the best player in the league. Sometimes it goes to the best player on the best team. Sometimes it goes to the player with the biggest numbers. Sometimes it goes to the player with the best story. That is why fans get confused, and honestly, that is why debates like this never go away. Because if the standard changes from year to year, then people are going to go back and say certain players got robbed. And when you look at Michael Jordan in 1986-87, this is one of the clearest cases where it feels like the award was more about team record than about true value. That season, Michael Jordan averaged 37.1 points per game. Think about that for a second. 37 points per game in that era, not in a league where everybody was taking 10 threes a night, not in a system built to give one guy all the space in the world. He did it in a more physical game, with hard fouls, packed paint, and defenses built to stop stars. He played all 82 games. He gave the Bulls 40 minutes a night. He scored over 3,000 points in the season. Those numbers are not just great, they are historic. They are the kind of numbers that should make an MVP case almost impossible to beat. And it was not just scoring. That is what makes this even stronger. Jordan also gave the Bulls 5.2 rebounds, 4.6 assists, 2.9 steals, and 1.5 blocks per game. He was doing everything. He was not just a scorer chasing points. He was defending at a high level, making plays, carrying the offense, and bringing energy on both ends of the court. When you look at those numbers together, you were looking at a player who was dominating the game in every area that matters. He was not just leading the league in scoring, he was overwhelming teams with effort, skill, speed, defense, and control of the game. Now compare that to Magic Johnson, who won the MVP. Magic had an amazing season, too. He averaged 23.9 points, 12.2 assists, and 6.3 rebounds. He shot over 52% from the field and led the Lakers to 65 wins. That is a great MVP season. Nobody should deny that. Magic was one of the best players in the world, and his impact was real. But here's where the debate starts. Magic had far more help, a far better team, a far better structure, and a roster full of proven players. Michael Jordan did not have anything close to that. So when people look at team wins and use that as the main reason Magic deserved the award, they leave out the biggest.
23-12.
Magic was playing with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, James Worthy, Byron Scott, Michael Cooper, and a deep team that knew how to win. This was not a team depending on one man to do everything. This was a smart, deep, talented team built to compete for a title. Magic made them better, of course he did, but the Lakers were already strong from top to bottom. They had finishers, scorers, defenders, and experience. When Magic got those 12 assists a game, he was passing to players who could score, players who knew how to move, players who could finish plays at a high level. That matters. Great passing still takes skill, but your team has to help turn those passes into numbers. Now look at Michael Jordan's Bulls. His second best scorer was Charles Oakley at around 14.5 points per game. After that, John Paxson was around 11 points a game. That tells you everything you need to know. Jordan was carrying a team that simply did not have another high-level scorer. He did not have another star beside him. He did not have a Hall of Fame core around him. He did not have a deep, polished team ready to fight for the top of the league. He had to create almost everything himself. Defenses knew exactly where the danger was coming from, and it still did not matter. He still dropped 37 a night. That is where the real MVP argument becomes strong. Value is not just about being great on a great team. Value is about how much your team depends on you. If you remove Magic Johnson from those Lakers, they are still a very strong team. Maybe not a 65-win team, but still a dangerous playoff team. They still have talent, size, scoring, and winning experience. But if you remove Michael Jordan from the Bulls, what do they become? That is the question nobody can avoid. Without Jordan, that team likely falls apart. Without Jordan, the Bulls are not fighting for a playoff spot. Without Jordan, they are near the bottom. That is value. That is what value looks like when it is real. The Bulls finished 40-42, and some people use that against Jordan. They say no player on a team with that record should win MVP. But that argument only works if you ignore everything around him. A 40-win season on a weak team can mean more than a 65-win season on a loaded team if one player is doing all the heavy lifting. Jordan dragged that roster into the playoffs. He did not have the balance Magic had. He did not have the support Magic had. He did not have the margin for error Magic had. Every night, the Bulls needed Jordan to score, defend, lead, and carry them. If he had an off night, they were in trouble. That kind of pressure was on him the whole season. And remember, Jordan was not putting up empty stats. That is an important part of this. There are times when a player scores a lot, but it does not feel like it moves the team anywhere. That was not the case here. Jordan's greatness turned a weak team into a playoff team. That matters. The Bulls were not some total disaster with numbers that looked good on paper and nothing else. They made the postseason. They stayed competitive because Jordan refused to let them fall apart. He was the engine, the spark, the closer, and the problem solver all in one. That is not normal. That is MVP-level responsibility. What makes this debate even more powerful is that the eye test backs it up. When people watched Michael Jordan in that season, they were not just seeing a great scorer. They were seeing the best player in basketball. That is what T-Mac and Vince Carter were getting at in that discussion. How can the best player in the world be putting up numbers like that, carrying a team like that, and still not win MVP? If the award is not always about the best player, then fine, say that clearly. But do not act like Jordan's case was weak. It was one of the strongest cases you will ever see from a player who had less help than the other top names. This is also where the old best player on the best team idea becomes a problem. That rule sounds clean, but it is not always fair. Basketball is a team game. Some stars walk into great situations. Some stars have systems built around them. Some stars have other stars next to them. Some stars have depth, coaching, and balance. Others are asked to carry a weak roster and still produce at an impossible level. If you reward the player with the best team all the time, then you are not always rewarding the most valuable player. Sometimes you are rewarding the player in the best situation. That is a huge difference. Magic Johnson was incredible, but the Lakers were supposed to be great. They were built to be great. That team had championship dreams before the season even started. They had talent everywhere. Michael Jordan's Bulls were not built like that. Jordan had to raise the level of the whole team just to keep them alive. That is why many people look back and say he got robbed. Not because Magic was unworthy of praise, but because Jordan's burden was heavier and his individual level was higher. When one player is carrying a roster that far beyond its natural level, that has to mean something in the MVP race. Another thing that helps Jordan's case is how complete his season really was. It is easy to focus only on the 37 points because that number is so huge, but the steals and blocks matter too. Jordan was making life hard for opponents on defense every single night. He was active, sharp, and aggressive. He was not resting on one end so he could score on the other. He was putting pressure on both sides of the floor. That is why his season feels so special. He was not just doing one thing at an elite level. He was doing many things at a high level while carrying a massive load. And think about the attention he faced from defenses. Everybody knew the Bulls ran through him. Everybody knew they had to stop him. Everybody knew there was no second superstar waiting to punish them if they sent extra help. Still, he scored 37.1 a game. That tells you how unstoppable he was. Great scorers can pile up points when the floor is wide open and the defense has to respect several threats. Jordan did it when the defense could focus mainly on him. That makes the scoring even more impressive. It was not easy scoring. It was pressure scoring, hard scoring, needed scoring. Some people will still say wins have to matter most, and that is fair to a point. Winning always matters. The MVP should not ignore winning. But the problem comes when team record becomes the whole argument. If wins are the only thing that matter, then just call it the Best Player on the Best Team award and be done with it. But that is not what MVP is supposed to mean. The word valuable should force people to look deeper. Valuable to who? Valuable in what way? Valuable compared to what situation? Once you start asking those questions, Jordan's case becomes very hard to dismiss. There's also a bigger reason why this debate still matters today. It tells us a lot about how history gets shaped. Fans often look at awards and treat them like final truth. 5 MVPs, 6 MVPs, 4 MVPs, 1 MVP. Those numbers become part of how players are remembered. But awards are voted on by people, and people are not perfect. They have habits, favorites, stories they believe, and standards that change over time. So when you go back and review seasons like this one, you realize that the record books do not always tell the full story. Sometimes the award winner is right, sometimes it is close, and sometimes a player really does have a strong case to say, that should have been mine. For Jordan, this season fits that last group. It feels like one that should have been his. He had the stats, the workload, the full season health.
The only thing he did not have was the better roster and the better record. That is what likely cost him. Voters saw 65 wins from the Lakers and 40 wins from the Bulls, and that probably decided it. But if the same season happened now, people would at least have a much louder debate about context. They would ask more questions about supporting cast, team value, and how much one player raised the level of his roster. And that is why what T-Mac and Vince Carter said hits home with so many fans. They were not just throwing out a random hot take, they were touching on something real. They were pointing out how strange it is that a player can clearly look like the best player in the world, put up numbers that sound unreal, carry a weak team into the playoffs, and still finish behind someone whose biggest advantage was having a better team. That does not sit right with a lot of people, and honestly, it should not. These are the kinds of seasons that force you to rethink how awards are given. It also adds something to Jordan's legacy. He already has 5 MVPs, 6 championships, finals MVPs, scoring titles, and every kind of praise a player can get. He does not need people to fight for him to prove he was great. His greatness is already beyond question. But this debate shows just how much more he may have deserved. When people say Jordan should have had at least one more MVP, this is the season they often look at. And the crazy thing is, the more you study it, the more reasonable that sounds. It does not feel like fan fantasy. It feels like a real missed call. What I also like about this debate is that it reminds people not to judge old seasons only by team standings and award lists. You have to look at the full picture. Who had help? Who had pressure? Who had to carry more? Who was doing things nobody else could do? Who was the reason a team stayed alive? That matters. Basketball is deeper than one line in the standings. Jordan's 1986-87 season is one of the best examples of that. The Bulls were not powerful, but Jordan was. The team was limited, but he was limitless. The record was not pretty, but his value was massive. So when I hear people say Magic Johnson was the right MVP because the Lakers won 65 games, I understand the point, but I do not fully buy it. Winning matters, yes. Great teams deserve credit, yes. Magic was amazing, yes. But if we're staying true to the words most valuable player, then Michael Jordan has the stronger case. He meant more to his team. He carried more of the burden. He had less help. He played every game. He scored at a historic level. He defended at a high level. He took a weak team to the playoffs. If that is not value, then what is? At the end of the day, this is why the 1986-87 MVP race is still worth talking about. It is not just an old debate for people who love basketball history. It is a real example of how awards can miss the deeper truth. Magic Johnson won the trophy, and no one can take that away from him, but Michael Jordan may have had the stronger case, and there is nothing wrong with saying that out loud.
In fact, the more honest thing may be to admit it. Jordan should have won that MVP. He did enough, more than enough. And if the award had truly gone to the player who gave the most value to his team, then that season belongs to Michael Jordan. That is why this season stands out so much when people talk about Jordan being robbed of an MVP. It was not a small edge. It was not just a fan trying to rewrite history because of what Jordan became later. It was a serious case in real time, and it still looks serious now. When you score 37 a game, play all 82, defend, lead, and drag a team into the playoffs with limited help, your name should be called. That did not happen, and that is why people still bring it up. Jordan's legacy is already untouchable, but this season is a reminder that even legends can be shorted by the voting. So yes, Michael Jordan should have won the MVP in 1987-87, not because Magic Johnson was not great, but because Jordan was more valuable in the truest sense of the word. He gave more, carried more, and meant more to his team. That is the heart of the debate, and that is why it has lasted for so long. The numbers, the context, the team strength, and the eye test all point